check up underneath here. I want to kind of see how much of a partition. So we do have a partition that's in there. We're going to need to be far enough away or centered up. Some of them mount right into the sink. I didn't see any examples online where they had it off to the side like this. And just so that I can use other sinks without having to drill too many holes, I want to center that up. I don't want it way over here where it may limit the type of sink that I can use. That line. I'm going to put some tape down. So what I'm doing now, just like I drew a line over there, and then I use this to kind of form a line, I'm going through and using my square to mark another line so I can kind of box this out, make sure it's fairly square. It's not going to be perfect, but at least it gives me a good visual. Let's go 2 1/8 on that side. 2 1/8 on that side, good. What the outer border is going to be. This is not what we're cutting, but we're going to use that and measure the inner portion, and that's what we'll cut out. Just want to make sure I can see all of that. So now let's measure what that is. So that's right at 18 inches. So we want that. Oh man, we were close. Right there is our 9-inch mark. So if we want it centered up, that's where we're going to drill our hole. That fit. If we center it up, I'm just going to lay it on its side for right now because that'll give me an idea if I have enough space. I've got to make sure I've got more than 1 inch from there, and I do. So if we place it right there, we should have plenty of room. So you notice we've got a 1/4 of an inch, we've got a 1/2 inch. That longest line in between those two, that's going to be 3/8 of an inch. So that's the distance we need to measure from that outer border towards the inside so we'll know what to cut out. And that's what you're going to cut out because you need some sort of lip for that sink to rest in. So that's either 10 millimeters or 3/8 of an inch. We're going to go from the outer border towards the inside and measure that distance all the way around, and we're going to use that to cut out. Use a jigsaw or something that you can use where you can just kind of follow along. Jigsaw is probably going to be the easiest way to keep it straight. If you don't have a jigsaw, I'll show you another option. All right, you have a couple of different options. You could use some sort of like saw max. The problem is the turns are going to be an issue with this. You could use something like that, but this is fairly thick, so you're also, again, going to have problems with the turns. I think your best option is some sort of jigsaw because you'll be able to make those turns easier. Start off with, shows a 1/8 bit, but that's pretty small, and then go into 5/16. And then from 5/16, you should be able to insert your jigsaw saw and then go through and cut out the border. And all the steps here, it shows how to get everything kind of square. We did that, so we're good to go. Now, we did 3/8 of an inch, and it looks like it's recommending going on that inner line and measuring out a 1/4 inch inside that inner line after you've drilled the hole. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me other than to give yourself a cushion so that you don't cut too much off, and then you could recut it if needed. All right, we're through there. All right, the saw blade I had been using for aluminum. The tooth size is way different, so this one's gonna give me a finer cut. It's in there good. It's gonna cover up most of my marks too. It'll give us about 1 inch of leeway either way if we have to adjust. So that moves us right around there. And that should be good where it's not touching anything because you won't have this lip underneath there. There's nothing for it to touch. All right, let's go ahead. We'll drill the hole. Let's get that mounted up there. and make sure everything's gonna fit where we want it to. Sweet, that looks good. I like that. Glue that we put down will bond everything, or that sealant that we put down will have something to bond to. Make sure it's nice and clean. There's no tape in the way. So go ahead, remove this tape, and then we'll wash that. Let's go ahead and wipe this down, just get all that residual powder off, and then we'll let it dry. All right, let's go ahead, dry that down. We're going to take a silicone sealant and we're going to cover the inside of that particle board so that water won't seep into it, and then we're going to spread it out across there and we'll let it dry a little bit before we put the sink in. But we want to make sure that that is sealed so that any water that comes up underneath that sink, that gets on the countertop and comes up underneath the sink, doesn't get into the particle board. Otherwise, it'll just destroy it. Make sure you clean off the inner portion of that as well. Otherwise, when you put that sealant on, it'll gum up. And it's white. You can get it in different colors. This is for kitchen, bath, and plumbing. This is what I used in our kitchen. I'm going to spread some of that around. Not too much, but enough to cover everything. I'm leaving that hanging over because it's going to continue to drip it, and that excess that continues to come out of there, I'm just making sure everything's sealed up along the bottom. So those are going to snap in like that. That part right there, once we tighten it down, is going to have to connect with the bottom part of that cabinet. And then let's take this part off, and then we'll be able to mount that hardware in there. All right, we've got these off, just the metal portion of the bracket. We left the plastic piece. Now we're going to pick that up, slide that into place. There's a little rubber seal that's on there. So as we tighten those down, it's going to sink that, it's going to pull this down. To keep those into place and to keep those from pressing in to the sink itself, I put these two slats of wood, and I did that all the way around. And that really made it where it's secured better because it kept these brackets level and made it easier for me to get those screwed in so that they would actually catch on the countertop. All right, here's our drain. It shows our steps on what to do. So your seal going in the top will also have a seal in the bottom. Using that nut to screw that down. Get all the seals right. That goes down, that makes a good seal there. This is our bottom seal, and you can see that it's got this indentation that fits in there. So this is going to come up from the bottom. Here, fit around that, and then you take that nut that they gave you, thread that down. I'm going to do it by hand first. It doesn't call for any plumber's putty, but if it leaks, we may have to, but I doubt it needs it. Good, that's making a good seal. Tighten it up. I don't want to over tighten it, not to the point that you break this. In that final step, it shows different countries on different drainage options and what you have to use. And this one for North America and Australia. That's what we were using there. Looked at this diagram a little bit, but not this piece of it. So it shows that this is facing directly in. We want to turn it 90 degrees to the spout. So let's do that. So once you turn that 90 degrees, you get these arrows matched up, and it shows that in the diagram. Got a piece of tape over it. I did not notice that. I bet you that other one is too. We'll take that off in just a sec, but let's go ahead. Tighten that down. All right, so that shows it going righty-tighty, going clockwise, if we were looking face down on it. We dampened that down and then we sealed it with silicone, so we're good on that step. Gasket, seal, and then that brass nut that's going to throw it. All right, based on your cabinet top thickness, It depends on what you're going to have to use. So anything from a max of 2 3/16, this faucet will fit through so that you can have enough threads to thread up on. And the minimum would be your 1 3/8, which is what we have. So something between 1 3/8 and 1 1/2. If you use that, like if you're not confident that yours is thick enough, you could use that additional support, this triangular one, which I may use it just to use it. And we may need extensions for those to reach our older plumbing setup, and that's going to go flush there. Let's go together if you do this option. It's the same order minus this if you're not going to use it. So on the bottom part that fits in, this fits there, and then this brass nut is going to go after it. And then that'll thread. And we'll tighten it down like that. So I slid that over on the nut once I got it run down by hand, and then I tightened it down. Just snug. We don't want to break it. Yeah, that's in there good. All right, this is step 4. We're going to take this piece and connect these two. They probably only go one way. All right, that one's snapped on there. And now we're going to take this one, bring it around, snap it in. That one's on there. So you're going to thread it until that opens up enough for that to fit in. And then once it fits in, you're going to turn it clockwise like for now. All right. So we threaded it down until we couldn't thread it anymore. So in 6, it shows to place these connections, one on hot, one on cold. So I'm going to take some of that nylon tape and run over there on each one of these. This one still has quite a bit. So these are color coded. One is colored blue for cold. One's colored red. It's got a red ribbon. All right, I believe hot is here, and I believe cold is on. And then we'll turn those against each other, keeping this one in place so that it doesn't put stress on that hose. That was hot, that was cold. And this was the old trap setup. This portion had the garbage disposal coming in. You notice it's got like a little splash guard. It's like if you look down there, the water coming straight will continue to go down. I'm gonna buy a cover, but you can see how nasty that is. I've taken this apart and kind of cleaned it out as good as I could, and I pulled out some nasty stuff that was in there because this trap will collect stuff in it, and that's normally where your clog is going to be at. So I've loosened all of these up, so these all loosen, so that I can move this around and get it into position because I don't want to put a lot of stress on these old pots. All right, we're going to go to Home Depot or something and get something just to cap that, but right now it should work. And our last step now is to take that hook up and plug it into the dishwasher, but we don't need to do that yet. We'll make a separate video on how to hook up the dishwasher. Right, in case we get a leak, I'm going to place all of that underneath that trap just as a backup. So if anything leaks, we can catch it without it warping that stuff, because all this is fairly new. I want to make sure that we do a little testing before we go. All right, let's see if we're hooked up. So that should be, that's hot water, so straight out, and that's what it says. That should be hot water going that direction, and it is. I don't see any leaks yet. And then that should be cold. Yep, that's cold.